Okay. Wanted to go over little aspects about a Elden Ring DLC interview and talk about what build I would plan to take into it and why. And I think there are some that may have misconstrued the true impact of a new mechanic that's going to be introduced. And really not, like, kind of underwhelmingly misput Elden Rings and I guess Souls in general, Souls builds strengths as more simplified and more linear, more uninteresting than they really are. And so I'm going to explain all of that in due time. The main things that I want to go over here are this question and answer here, and then this one down here. So these two. Are there any new elements unique to the DLC? There is an element of leveling unique to the DLC. Think of the attack power system in Sekiro. Separate from the original level system, there is an attack power that only enabled in the DLC areas. This was introduced in order to give freedom to meet the threats mentioned earlier, so that you can do something like exploring other areas before going back to challenge bosses that were too strong for the first time, allowing you to more easily experience this even in the high level range. On the other hand, by keeping your attack power low, you can also experience this challenge at a lower level. Okay. There is nothing else to look into other than what Miyazaki said. That's the purpose. You have two purposes. One of them is just challenging yourself more, and the other one is having that feeling of going somewhere else, leveling up, quote unquote, and then coming back to a tough boss that felt like a roadblock, but you could use the open world as a way around and then back to it, and ultimately get that proper base game level of satisfaction, even though it's a late game DLC, and you're going to be leveled up very high. So your damage output is going to be very high as well. And so this way, they have it so that you are essentially re-leveling up your damage. Or maybe even getting it to above normal, which is cool as well. I've heard people say, oh, this is because the DLCs traditionally in FromSoft games don't offer you much progression. There's no progression, it's post-game, no progression, yada yada yada. And, I mean, that's just ridiculous, because you look at Ashes of Ariandel in Ring City, specifically Ashes of Ariandel, you can enter that as early as Cathedral of the Deep and get the Ethereal Oak Shield, which is huge for progression throughout the early and mid-game. Because not only is it 100% physical block shield that you can use your weapon arts with, but you can also have a passive HP regen equivalent to a maxed out blessed weapon. So it's just very, very good in general. Like, it's really good on your back to have. It's just a really solid item to have on many, many builds. Furthermore, there are unique weapons in the Ring City, and armor, and spells, and everything, such that it provides new utility. It is doing new things for builds. And really, that's what Elden Ring and Souls progression is. It's not just, oh, I get to upgrade my stuff to the next plus. Oh, I get to put this stat in, and that allows me to deal more damage. It's, I get to use all of these different things, but only as I get them. And that's also part of progression, just getting new stuff. And having those new stuff fit different niches. And where do we get a lot of the best stuff? in the DLCs. Now, is there going to be new upon new upon new stuff? Yeah, of course. But I think even more than we expected. Because of this question here, are there new weapons, magic, or incantations? Yes, many weapons, spells, weapon arts have been added. They're one of the main selling points of this DLC. Like, obviously, there's going to be additional variety in utility, in getting your results the way that you want. Very few people are going to go into the DLC and say, nope, this one-handed sword that I've liked from the base game, I'm not even going to experiment with any of this other stuff, even if it fits my build stats and build concept. Like, that's ridiculous. So, I don't understand where people are coming from when they say DLCs don't really have any progression other than this system. It's ludicrous. The system already has benefits that Miyazaki's mentions. We don't need to degrade Souls or Elden Ring progression in order to try to make this seem better. It is already purposeful. We don't need to lie to make it better. It's fucking ridiculous. But yeah, it's just 8 new weapon types added. 8 new weapon types added. Oh my god. It's just, it's incredible. There's large katanas, Oldachi, Yakutekan, so it's reverse grip swords. And then there's more stuff, so that there's like martial arts stuff, dueling shields, throwing daggers. There's so much going on. And yeah, should be fun and refreshing for players who have gone through all of the weapons in the main story. Yeah. So we're set. We are very, very set. We'll get our builds done excellently. And honestly, any suboptimal build, any optimal build is gonna have DLC stuff just going back throughout the ages. Especially in Ring City, and Ashes of Ariandel, but especially Ring City. Oh my god, that did wonders, not only for armor, but weapons, Ashes of War, spells, all of it. Basically, every aspect that makes builds good. Beyond just, oh, I got more damage here. The DLC expanded on. And of course, considering this is going to be like the largest DLC that they've ever done, it's going to expand upon that even more. Now I'm going to take my Ruins build in. My Ruins Greatsword build. It's strength with a little bit of int, there's some extra stuff, but mainly just enough int to do some simple shenanigans with good weapons. And then focus it on strength. You can have good strength weapons that carry with it a very specific niche, like the Claymore with its very good poking R2, and yet quick because the Zweihander would have the poking R2 as well, and that's large, but I already have a very strong, large weapon here in the Ruins Greatsword with a fire Ash of War. Not literally fire, like metaphor, you know what I mean. It's amazing. There are a lot of really varied Ashes of Wars and weapons that I could use, but I've narrowed it down to a very limited kit based off of just converging strategies and damage types and which outclasses what, you know what I mean, in the PvE sense. And I've limited them because not only is there going to be limited upgrade mats per progression throughout zones, there's also going to be limited end upgrade stones. So your capstone upgrades, your ancient dragon smithing stones, and ancient somber dragon smithing stones. Right now there's 13 and 8. So 13 ancient dragon smithing stones, 8 somber ancient dragon smithing stones, which is very cool, and it's more than I'm going to have here. But I am going to want to test out a great deal of weapons, and I might want to upgrade more than what I find is optimal, or what I find is necessary for this build to shine on a mechanical basis. But you consider all of the different variety that's coming, and I'm like, oh, well, maybe I'll need that extra stuff. There's also probably going to be patches and changes to weapon classes that already exist, and maybe even just additional spells and things. I'm pretty sure the Demi-Human Queen staff scaling is going to get fixed in the DLC right now. It just does not work for strength scaling. So the Claw Mark seal does work for strength scaling, but the Demi-Human Queen staff and the Digger staff don't work for strength scaling. Very weird. I'm also thinking that maybe there's going to be a Hollow Slayer type greatsword in the DLC. What do I mean by that? In Dark Souls 3, the Hollow Slayer greatsword was a beautiful, beautiful weapon that combined the Claymore's Poke R2 with the luxurious regular R1 moveset of the Knights and Banished Knights greatsword that we currently have in Elden Ring. These two together and back in one again, maybe custom Ash of War just like old times, just like with the Claymore. Oh man, this should be phenomenal. And if we get one that's strength scaling, I'm all in. I'm all in on that. There also was previewed a nice little, let's see if I can find it. Well, this armor, I'll get back to that armor. Where is, yeah, here we are. This guy here, let's actually meet this. Yep, right there. This looks like maybe a Gravity Great Lance. Again, that's strength int, almost certainly. And I am going straight for that. I'm going straight for that. That's almost guaranteed going to be a good inclusion on here. My build currently has most of the strength int gravity stuff. The only thing that I don't include here is the Falling Star Beast Jaw. It's really because it's a colossal weapon that does pierce, and I already have so much pierce settled right here with this Claymore. I am set with that. So, at that point, it's just not particularly wonderful for me to use. In PvP, it would be pretty good because of that brutal Ash of War, but currently, PvE, they nerfed the hell out of that with stance damage. Almost rightfully so, but they kind of killed it at the same time. Oh well. That's fine. I'm fully expecting that Lance and then the new Twin Blade teased as well to be very good. There's also, of course, giant pots right here. Look at that. That's glorious. Probably strength. There's also a great deal of armor, so we go to this lap-looking guy. Come on, man. Absolutely glorious armor. The more armor you have, the more you can optimize your build. What do I mean by that? Well, with armor, you have to value and optimize a convergence of good poise, at least 51 right now ever since patch 1.10, so that you can tank a lot of light boss attacks and keep going with whatever you want to do. But we're probably going to have more than that because of my endurance. But you also need to think about equip load so that you can maintain a medium roll while wearing all of your stuff and having all of your weapons and other things in your main slots. And finally, you need to worry about raw defenses. Physical is the main thing to worry about, so keeping those three things, equip load, poise, and physical defenses in mind is absolutely crucial. And the more pieces of armor that you get, the more you can fine-tune your set so that you can meet all three of those at the best convergence point possible. And getting more armors into DLC just means that we'll be able to make this happen easier. Not only that, but in Elden Ring especially, there have been a lot more pieces of armor that give secondary bonuses to certain strategies or certain damage. More than any other Souls game. There's so many, and I assume we'll get even more in the DLC too. So I'm fully expecting the armor to have non-obvious, non-linear progression as well. Because that's just how it's always been in Souls games. Not only that, but your sidearms, like these crossbows. Right now I have just enough dex for the pulley crossbow. And that is so that I can use, well, something that I've just talked about, the Mushroom Crown, to get rot procs, poison procs in a decent vicinity to your character. Mainly poison procs. And then I'd get a plus 10% damage boost. That's quite a decent amount. That's going to work with Talisman 2, Kindred of Rot's Exaltation. It's down here somewhere. There it is. Yay. And that's going to stack for at least 30% buff. Now, these types of buffs tend to scale multiplicatively. It's Miyazaki giving you a little bonus, a little boost, a little cookie for finding things that synergize. I always like that rather than a flat additive bonus. Multiplicative is spicy. And so generally the damage buff that you're going to get from that is huge. And the cool thing is, now it's currently bugged and it might be fixed in DLC, but the Kindred of Rot's Exaltation buffs physical and all of your elemental damage by 20% when you proc that. The Lord of Blood's Exaltation used to also do that, but it was patched out to just physical. The Kindred of Rot's Exaltation still buffs elemental. And so I get to boost all of my magic stuff as well. Which means, should the Demi-Human Queen Staff be fixed, I can then go and do some simple mage stuff, and even though I only have 18 int on this build, Rock Sling is getting better. Even though I can just use this for stance damage now, the actual damage would get better. Gravity Well would get slightly better, even though I'm just using it for its raw utility of get over here, so that I can combo into Ruin's Greatsword or what have you. It's gonna be better. Scholar's Shield is gonna be better. I can get rid of Gravity Well there. Glintstone Ice Crag, something that I could use for DPS, but also Frostbite. That would be much better. Great Glintstone Shard, DPS, but also something good if they are immune to Frostbite. Just raw magic damage. Magic Glint Blade. Something good to just have if the enemies are really dodge happy and they love to read your inputs. They don't really care about the Magic Glint Blade as much. And so you can set a bunch of those up and get your damage in right as you're going in for maybe DPS or a stance break. All sorts of spice that you could plan ahead for with Magic Glint Blade. And enemies, well, they get hit by it pretty much always. And so all of this stuff comes to mind with the DLC in terms of progression. The builds are just going to be that much better. There's a new Twin Blade revealed. So it's in the final area here. Final encounter with Mesmer. Oh, look at that. New Twin Blade. Looks chunky. Looks like it's probably strength. Probably gonna make good use of that. Right now I'm making use of the Gargoyle's Twin Blade. Cold Gargoyle's Twin Blade plus Ice Spear. Wow. Puts in some serious work. Serious work. Stance damage, Frostbite, and DPS. Oof. Not only that, but we could slap a whole bunch of Ashes of War on that, including Black Flame Tornado, which is glorious. But also, Glint Blade Phalanx. And speaking of which, the great number of Ashes of War, which, again, the ones that I've mentioned so far, are not necessarily raw damage, but Ice Spear is stance damage. Glintstone Phalanx is stance damage. These sort of things. Spinning Slash is stance damage. Lion's Claw, I love it. Stance damage. And Control, knocks enemies down, even large enemies down. Very, very good. Black Flame Tornado is percent all damage, so it won't really matter if we had proper progression, quote unquote, or not. This would still be very strong. Cragblade, stance damage. Like a lot of these things, Stormcaller is DPS, but also could be stance damage. a good deal of them are just stance damage. Some of them are just other just pure damage or DPS style Ashes of War. But a great deal of these good ones that I'm selected for this build are purely stance damage utility. Which means dropping down my overall damage, it's not going to really affect my strategies too much because, well, throughout the game I've progressed, and not progressed in terms of damage, because that's not all that progression is. Progressed in terms of Ashes of War as well. And, well, Miyazaki's confirmed, and I think we all knew it was going to be, there are going to be a bunch more Ashes of War in Shadow of the Erdtree. And so we are going to have very, very good progression in all of these ways. Anyway, this video, it's probably longer than it needs to be. Oh well. But I hope you're excited as much as I do, and I hope you're equally as confused at people saying that just pure damage is equivalent to progression in Elden Ring. Like, oh, I get to up my base numbers. That means I'm progressing. Like, that's such a limited aspect of Elden Ring progression that it makes me think, has this guy even, like, done a full proper Souls playthrough in any Souls game? I don't know. Anyway, I'm not gonna name drop the guy. I'm not gonna do that, but oh god, painful times. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're excited as I am, and oh boy, I hope you're able to formulate cool builds and get yourself ready, because you're gonna have to beat Radahn and Mohg, it's been confirmed, to actually enter the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. Which makes sense. Everybody thought it was gonna be Miquella's hand, and it is. So, get yourself ready, get a character somewhat ready. But I might just go in with this build. Yeah. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys some other time. Bye.